I'm very concerned about this. It has to do with the economy. And let me put this in a political frame to begin with, and then we'll talk about the details. There have been several articles over the last 6 months or a year in the Wall Street Journal and in the Financial Times, and they've been reported elsewhere as well. But basically, those are the publications where the rich people are talking to the rich people and the Republicans are talking to the Republicans. And the essence of the articles has been that whenever an economy is good going into a presidential election, going into the November of the election year, going into the polls, the day that you go into the polls, if the economy is good, whatever party happens to hold the White House tends to get reelected. If the economy is bad, whatever party holds the White House tends to lose. Now, this is just a simple reality. It's not always the case, but it is more often the case than not. People vote their pocketbooks. It's an old, Clinton figured this out in '92. They had that sign in their campaign office. It's the economy, stupid. And Republicans know this. Now, who's in the White House right now? A Democrat. So if I'm a Republican strategist, if I'm Frank Luntz or Karl Rove, and I'm sitting around going, okay, if people will vote out the party that holds the White House when the economy tanks, as, by the way, Donald Trump pointed out to Jeb Bush happened in 2008. Trump, of course, this was he set up the line where Jeb Bush said, "My brother kept us safe," which is the most hysterically laughable thing. Over 3,000 deaths at the hands of terrorists during the Bush administration. No more than 100 or 200 in any other administration in the history of the United States. I mean, it's the president who least effectively kept us safe was George W. Bush. But anyhow, the point that Trump made to Jeb was Abraham Lincoln himself couldn't have run for re-election in 2008 as a Republican because the economy was so bad. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. And he was right. And every Republican on that stage knows he was right. And all of the Republican consultants know that he was right. So the Republicans, and I point this out, by the way, at some length in my book, The Crash of 2016, which is increasingly, to me, seeming prescient and important. In The Crash of 2016, I point out how, the Republicans know that if they can crash the economy, that when there's a Democrat in the White House, odds are a Republican will get elected to the White House, which is what they want because they want control of the Supreme Court. And not to mention that they would like control of the White House, but the Supreme Court is actually the most powerful institution in the United States right now and has been for some time. So what's going on with the economy and what are the Republicans doing around this? Well, first of all, there's a very dangerous game that they're playing here in Washington, D.C. The Janet Yellen, the chairwoman of the Fed, the Federal Reserve Board, spoke out against yesterday. She said, and I quote, this is from an article by Daniel Marans in today's Financial Times, this is from HuffPost Politics. I believe, Janet Yellen said, it is the responsibility of Congress to pass a budget, to fund the government, to deal with the debt ceiling so that America pays its bills. We have a good recovery in place that is really making progress. To see Congress take actions that would endanger that progress, I think it would be quite unfortunate. And she pointed out that Standard & Poor's, well, actually the article points out, Standard & Poor's estimated that the last Republican-led government shutdown in October 2013, again driven by Ted Cruz, cost the economy $24 billion in lost GDP. That was a 16-day shutdown where Ted Cruz and the Republicans were holding their breath until they turned blue, having a tantrum over the Affordable Care Act. Well, this time they're going to do the same thing, only this time it's going to be around Planned Parenthood. And it's going to be a lot harder for sane Republicans to push back after Carly Fiorina in the Republican debates lied about what is in the so-called Planned Parenthood videos. I mean, she just literally told a lie. There is no kicking, heart-beating baby coming out of any of the videotape out of Planned Parenthood. In fact, that apparently was out of some other video, and it was an abortion, or a miscarriage, and it was like B-roll. So, Carly Fiorina is just making stuff up. The media is not calling her on it. And so everybody in America now believes that, oh my God, this is what Planned Parenthood does. And it's not. But that, in any case, so it's going to be harder for them not to shut down the economy. Meanwhile, 2 articles in today's Financial Times, actually, I think one was from a day or two ago. Yeah, it's from September 14th. And the others from today that give me pause. The first is FDI collapses across emerging markets amid economic slowdown. Now, what the heck does that mean? FDI is foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is when a billionaire in the United States looks at a company in Slovenia and says, this company looks like it has some potential. I think I'll invest in it. I mean, it's literally foreign. It's direct investment in direct companies by foreigners. And it's one of the ways that the so-called emerging markets grow. And according to figures from FDI Markets and FT Data Service, Financial Times Data Service, 97 of 154 countries typically classed as emerging markets have experienced decline in capital expenditure. And in 25 of the 97 countries showing negative growth, capital expenditure collapsed to zero. Another 42 saw dramatic declines of 50% or more. A further 22 saw drops of between 20 and 50% between January-June of 2014 and January-June of 2015. And I'll tell you, they've got the complete list here. And you look at these countries that are just collapsing economically. Jordan down 83%, Peru down 83%, Zambia down 86%, Panama down 91%, Costa Rica down 91%, Ethiopia down 91%, Croatia down 95%, Lebanon down 96%, Brazil down 65%, South Korea down 63%, Colombia down 55%, Serbia down 54%, Saudi Arabia down 51%, Malaysia down 49%, Russia down 46%. All of this stuff, Tunisia down 78%. All of this, these are the early warning signs of a worldwide crash. This is like, back in 2007, those of you who were listening to this program back then, you'll recall that I pointed out first or second quarter of 2007, housing starts in the U.S. dropped 30%. And I said, this means the stock market's going to go in the tank within a year. The housing market is going to, there's a bubble that's in the process of bursting. And it's going to take the stock market with it. It's going to take the entire economy with it. And I was right. And it's happening again. And then the other thing is these mega deals. When giant corporations merge with each other, they don't do it to increase productivity. In fact, if anything, it decreases productivity. They do it so that the executives, the senior executives and the major stockholders can walk off with millions, tens of millions, billions of dollars. Mega deals, this is the other story. This is in today's Financial Times. You can read this at ft.com. Mega deals for 2015 hit record high. We're surpassing the mergers and acquisitions frenzy of the mid-2000s, which led to the dot-com burst. So let me just finish this little rant here about the economy, and then we'll pick up your phone calls. It is Friday after all. But the thing I wanted to make very clear, the reason why big companies merge is to extract cash out of the economy. If you've got 2 big banks, for example, and they merge, what happens? Well, first of all, whatever bank handles the merger gets to make hundreds of millions of dollars in fees. Secondly, the executives of both the banks get tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases billions of dollars, out of the merger, in part because of their stock ownership, in part because there's there's going to be a sorting out, and some of these executives are going to lose their jobs, so they get these giant golden parachutes. Second thing that happens is the new bank doesn't need 2 accounting departments, so half the accountants get laid off. The new bank doesn't need 2 law departments, so half the lawyers get laid off. The new bank doesn't need 2 customer service departments, so half the customer service people get laid off. The new bank doesn't need 2 corporate headquarters, so all from the janitors to the receptionists to the building owners and they all get laid off. So basically, what mergers do is they shrink the economy, because they always result in the reduction of the number of jobs in an economy. Giant mergers shrink the economy at the expense of working people. And they make the banksters and the CEOs fabulously rich. The other thing that mergers do is they diminish competition. Now, instead of 2 banks competing with each other, and so they're both keeping the interest rates low on the loans that they're offering because they're competing, they're no longer competing. It's now just one bank. So now they're saying to their customers, hey, it's 6%, take it or leave it. Rather than, one bank says 6%, the next bank says 5.5, so this one says 5.3, so this one says 5.1, and pretty soon you've got an actual competition going on. No more competition. And this is one of the reasons why these giant corporations in virtually every industry, since Reagan stopped enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1983, the Sherman Antitrust Act made it illegal for mergers to be done for the purposes of diminishing competition. And yet that's the principal reason that they're done. So these mergers are destructive to an economy, and when they reach a certain threshold, when you get to, because what you're doing is, this is at this level of merger, these $10 billion plus mergers. What you are looking at here, it starts out, right? What's the old saying? The little fish are eaten by the medium-sized fish. The medium-sized fish are eaten by the big fish. Well, in this case, this is the big fish now coming together. The medium-sized fish are long gone. Medium-sized banks in America largely dead. There's some community banks out there. Credit unions are kind of falling. Actually, they're the small banks. But medium-sized banks, no. And that's just banking. It's true in pretty much every industry that the medium-sized companies are gone, and they used to be big employers. The large companies are what's left, and employees have absolutely no power against these giant corporations. They destroy the unions. The employees don't have the power to speak back. They're just powerless. Without a union and the banks are using essentially these mergers as a way of creating monopoly, as a way of blocking competition. So with that in mind, Arash Massoudi in London and James Fontanella Khan in New York wrote this piece for today's Financial Times, and I'm just going to share a couple of sentences from it. And just notice what happens when mega deals, when mega mergers hit a feverish pace. It has happened twice in the last 3 decades. It happened in the late 90s, leading up to 2001, as the dot-com bubble was getting more and more hysterical and more companies were being bought out by each other. And it happened again in 2007. So here's the article by Fontanella Khan and Massoudi. The volume of mega deals this year has reached an all-time high, surpassing previous records reached during the dot-com boom and credit-fueled mergers and acquisitions frenzy of the mid-2000s. With Altus's $17.7 billion deal to buy Cablevision on Thursday, the total value of attempted $10 billion plus transactions has reached $1.19 trillion, surpassing the previous high set in 1999, right before the dot-com bust. The total number of giant deals this year has climbed to 47, one short of the record in 2006, just before the financial crisis. So once again, and the Republicans are cheering this on, because they know that this kind of behavior on the part of not just big banks, but all these big corporations, not only makes their donor class very rich, but sets the economy up to crash. which will, in their minds, cause average voters to say, oh, that Democrat in the White House, he screwed things up. We got to put a Republican in the White House. Now, here's where the Republican calculus, in my opinion, is so dangerous. They're going to try and crash the economy so that a Republican will be elected president. Guess who that's going to help the most? Bernie Sanders. Because whose campaign is all about the economy? Bernie Sanders.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
So be careful what you wish for, Republicans. Be careful.